Zarleth stood before the massive window of the council tower, his 4 eyes fixed on the swirling purple clouds of the gas giant below. The sight usually calmed him, but not today. Today, he had to present his initial findings about human warfare to the Council of Star Systems, and what he had discovered worried him deeply. Behind him, the council chamber slowly filled with representatives from 50 different species. Their quiet whispers echoed off the crystal walls. Zarleth touched the data crystal in his pocket, double-checking it was still there. Inside it were recordings that would change how the galaxy viewed humans forever. Observer Zarleth called out first speaker Naldax, her voice cutting through the chamber's murmurs. "You may begin your presentation." Zarleth walked to the center of the room. His steps echoed on the polished floor as hundreds of eyes watched him. He placed the crystal into the projector, and the room darkened. "Honored Council," he began, "3 months ago, you asked me to study human military tactics. You wanted to know why the Earth Space Force keeps winning battles against superior enemies. What I found was unexpected." The projector lit up with images from the Battle of Proxima Ridge. The recording showed Commander Lisa Mitchell's small fleet facing off against a Drachnid battle group. The Drachnids had better ships, better weapons, and more soldiers. By all normal logic, they should have won easily. "Watch what Commander Mitchell does here," Zarleth said, pointing to a group of civilian mining ships behind the human battle line. The recording showed the mining vessels shooting their industrial cutting beams at nearby asteroids. The beams sliced through the rock like butter, creating clouds of debris. Several council members leaned forward in their seats. They watched as Mitchell's fleet retreated behind the debris field. The Drachnid ships followed, their superior weapons ready to destroy the humans. The Drachnids thought the humans were running away, Zarleth explained. They didn't realize this was a trap. On the screen, the mining ships activated their magnetic towing beams, equipment normally used to pull asteroids for mining. But Mitchell had modified them. The beams caught the floating rocks and began spinning them, faster and faster, creating a whirlwind of stones in space. The Drachnid ships flew right into it. Their shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, couldn't handle the constant impact of thousands of rocks. One by one, their ships suffered damage and had to retreat. Commander Mitchell won that battle using mining equipment, Zarleth said. Not weapons, not military technology. Mining tools. The chamber erupted in whispers. A Drachnid representative stood up, his scales bristling with anger. "This is not proper warfare. They used civilian equipment in a military operation." "Exactly," Zarleth replied calmly. "That's what makes humans different. They don't care about proper warfare. They care about winning." He switched the projection to another battle. This time, it showed Captain Daniel Wright defending the colony on New Montana. The human captain had only 3 warships to protect the planet against 12 enemy vessels. Captain Wright did something even stranger here, Zarleth continued. He used the colony's terraforming equipment to create a temporary atmosphere around his ships. The enemy's targeting systems couldn't lock onto his vessels through the artificial clouds. Then he hid his ships in the chaos and picked off the enemy one by one. More whispers filled the room. Some council members looked impressed, others worried. Zarleth understood their concern. How do you fight an enemy that turns everyday tools into weapons? "But the most interesting case is Lieutenant Catherine Brown," he said, changing the projection again. "She didn't even have warships. She commanded a group of modified cargo ships in the Epsilon sector." The recording showed plain-looking transport ships facing off against a superior enemy fleet. The cargo ships seemed to run away, splitting up in different directions. The enemy ships chased them, spreading their forces thin. "Watch what happens when the enemy ships catch up to their targets," Zarleth said. The cargo ships suddenly spun around. Their cargo bay doors opened, releasing clouds of small objects into space. The council members squinted, trying to figure out what they were seeing. "Those are mining explosives," Zarleth explained, "normally used to break up asteroids for mining. Lieutenant Brown modified them and turned her cargo ships into minlayers. The enemy fleet lost half their ships before they realized what was happening. First speaker Naldax raised her hand, silencing the growing chatter in the room. Observer Sarleth, what is your conclusion from these studies? Sarleth took a deep breath. Humans don't think like us when it comes to war. We see military equipment and civilian equipment as separate things. Humans see everything as a potential tool or weapon. They don't follow the normal rules of space warfare because they don't accept that there are rules. He paused, letting his words sink in. But there's more. In every battle I studied, humans were outnumbered and outgunned. They should have lost. Instead, they won by changing the rules of the fight. They turned their weaknesses into strengths. They used their enemies' expectations against them. Are you suggesting they're more advanced than us? Asked a council member. No, Tarleth replied. I'm suggesting they're more creative than us. And in some ways, that's more dangerous. He switched off the projector, and the chamber lights came back on. My research is only beginning, but I can already tell you this. We need to change how we think about humans. They're not just another species learning about space warfare. They're rewriting how space warfare works. The chamber erupted in debate. Some council members argued for restricting human access to civilian technology. Others wanted to learn from human tactics. A few even suggested making humans their military advisors. First speaker Naldax had to bang her gravity gavel 3 times to restore order. Observer Xarlev, you will continue your research. We need to understand these humans better. If they can do this much with mining tools and cargo ships, what else are they capable of? Zarleth nodded and gathered his materials. As he left the chamber, he could still hear the heated discussions behind him. He touched the data crystal again, thinking about all the other battles he still had to analyze. The humans had surprised him. Every time he thought he understood their tactics, they did something new and unexpected. It was like trying to predict water. It always found a new path to flow. Back at his window, Xarleth watched the purple clouds swirl below. The sight still didn't calm him, but now it reminded him of something else. The chaos humans created in battle. Like these clouds, humans turned disorder into an advantage. They thrived in chaos. He pulled out his data pad and began making notes for his next presentation. There were more battles to study, more unusual tactics to analyze, and somewhere in all this data, there had to be a pattern that explained how humans thought about war. But deep down, Xarleth wondered if even humans knew what they would do next. Maybe that was their real strength, not having a pattern at all. The research chamber was quiet except for the soft hum of holographic displays. Tarleth and his team had spent weeks reviewing battle recordings, trying to understand how humans fought. Today, they were studying the defense of New Montana, and something wasn't adding up. Play it again, Xarleth said to his assistant, a young Quirks whose crystalline body sparkled under the room's lights. Focus on Captain Wright's communications during the battle. The hologram flickered to life, showing Captain Daniel Wright's face during the critical moment of the fight. The human captain looked tired but calm, even though his colony was under attack by a superior force. Look at his expression, Xarleth pointed out. He's smiling. Why would he smile when facing certain defeat? The recording continued, showing Wright's voice transmission to his crew. Remember, folks, this is just like that time we went fishing in that hurricane back home. Same principle. Use the bad weather to our advantage. Quirks tilted his crystalline head. Fishing in a hurricane. That makes no sense. Why would humans fish during a dangerous storm? Exactly, Xarleth said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. That's what we need to understand. Not just how they fight, but why they think this way. He pressed another button, and the hologram showed the battle itself. Wright's 3 ships were heavily outnumbered, but instead of retreating, they moved closer to the colony. The captain ordered the terraforming stations to release their atmospheric processors at full power, creating a massive storm of gases and particles in space. Most species would see this as making things worse, Sarleth explained, adding chaos to an already difficult situation. But Wright treated it like fishing in a hurricane. Quarks finished, beginning to understand. The recording showed what happened next. Wright's ships, specially modified with enhanced sensors, could navigate through the artificial storm. The enemy ships, relying on standard targeting systems, couldn't lock onto anything in the chaos. One by one, Wright's vessels emerged from the clouds, fired precise shots, and disappeared again. He turned a disadvantage into an advantage, Sarleth said. But more than that, he had done something similar before, back on Earth. He applied an experience from his planet's oceans to a battle in space. The door slid open, and first speaker Naldax entered the research chamber. Everyone stood straighter, but she waved them back to their work. "Tell me you found something useful, observer." Sarleth nodded. "We're beginning to see patterns, but not the kind we expected. Humans don't fight like a military species should. They fight like survivors." He brought up another recording, this time showing Lieutenant Catherine Brown's cargo ship campaign. Watch how she uses the cargo ships. When attacked, she doesn't try to fight directly. She runs away, but always in a way that splits the enemy fleet up. A common prey tactic, Naldax observed. "Yes, but look what happens next," Sarleth said excitedly. "Once the enemy is divided, the prey becomes the hunter. Brown's ships turn around and attack the isolated enemy vessels. She's hunting like Earth's wolf packs, separate the prey from the herd, then strike." Naldax moved closer to the hologram. "You're saying they fight like animals?" "No, I'm saying they learn from everything. Animals, weather, their own history. It's all knowledge they can use in battle. Other species try to overcome nature. Humans work with it, even in space." He brought up more recordings. Commander Lisa Mitchell using asteroid fields like ancient Earth naval forces used islands for cover. Captain Wright creating space storms like the weather patterns of his home planet. Lieutenant Brown hunting in packs like Earth's predators. "Every human commander we've studied does this," Sarleth continued. "They take ideas from their planet's nature, history, and daily life, then apply them to space warfare. It's why their tactics seem so random to us. They're not drawing from military doctrine alone." Quarks had been analyzing the data as they talked. His crystalline form pulsed with blue light, a sign of excitement. "Observer, I found something interesting. In 78% of successful human battles, they mention Earth-based experiences in their communications. They're constantly making these connections." Naldax walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "So their greatest military strength comes from not being a military species." "In a way," Sarleth agreed. "Most spacefaring races try to overcome their planetary origins. We learn new ways to fight in space. Humans bring their planetary experiences with them. They don't see space as different from oceans or air. It's just another environment to adapt to." He brought up a final recording, showing Admiral Susan Carter's fleet at the Battle of Titan's Ring. Her ships moved in formations that made no sense to alien observers, until Quarks matched them with ancient Earth naval tactics. "Look here," Sarleth pointed. "Carter's ships cross the enemy's T and maneuver from old ocean battles. She's using tactics that worked on Earth's seas thousands of years ago, but they still work in space because the basic principles are the same." Naldax watched the recording with growing concern. "Are you suggesting we need to study Earth itself to understand human warfare?" "Yes," Sarleth said firmly. "Their planet is the key. It's violent, always changing, full of extreme weather and dangerous creatures. Humans had to learn to survive there before they ever reached space. They're not adapting to space warfare. They're making space warfare adapt to them." The first speaker was quiet for a long moment. "Continue your research, observer, but focus on Earth now. I want to know everything about this planet that creates such innovative warriors." After she left, Sarleth and his team began collecting data about Earth. They studied its oceans and storms, its predators and prey, its long history of warfare. Each new piece of information helped them understand human tactics better. "It's like they're all playing a different game," Quark said as they worked. "We try to master space combat, but humans don't see it as space combat at all. To them, it's just another survival challenge, like fishing in a hurricane." Sarleth looked at the mountain of data they still had to analyze. "That's what makes them dangerous. We fight battles. Humans fight for survival. And they've been practicing survival since their species began." He pulled up an image of Earth with its swirling clouds, vast oceans, and extreme environments. Their whole planet is a combat simulator, teaching them to adapt and overcome. No wonder they're so good at it. The research team worked late into the night, watching more battles, studying more Earth history. With each new discovery, they understood better why humans fought the way they did. But understanding them only made them more concerned about what humans might do next. Because if there was one thing they had learned, it was that humans never stopped adapting, never stopped learning, and never stopped surprising their enemies with new ways to turn chaos into victory. The research ship, Pattern Seeker, drifted silently through the Epsilon sector. Inside, Quark's crystalline form glowed with frustration as he reviewed Lieutenant Catherine Brown's battle tactics for the 100th time. Sarleth watched his young assistant with growing concern. "The numbers make no sense," Quark said, his crystal surfaces flickering with mathematical equations. "Brown's cargo ships should have lost every battle. Even with the mining explosives, they were too slow, too weak. But they won. They kept winning." Sarleth moved closer to the holographic display. "Maybe we're looking at it wrong. Instead of analyzing each battle separately, let's look at her whole campaign." The display changed to show a map of the Epsilon sector. Dozens of battle sites lit up like stars, connected by lines showing Brown's fleet movements. At first glance, it looked random. Her ships jumped from place to place with no clear pattern. "Wait," Sarleth said suddenly. "Expand the map. Show me everything in this region of space." As the map grew, more details appeared: solar wind patterns, asteroid fields, gravitational eddies, and trade routes. Suddenly, the pattern became clear. "Look!" Sarleth pointed excitedly. Brown wasn't moving randomly. She was using the natural flows of space like ocean currents, a voice said from the doorway. They turned to see Matthew Pearson, the human consultant who had recently joined their research team. He walked to the map, his eyes scanning the patterns. Back on Earth, old sailing ships used trade winds and ocean currents to move faster and save fuel. Brown's doing the same thing here with solar winds and gravity wells. Quark's crystal body pulsed with blue light, his version of a surprised blink. "But space combat isn't supposed to work like ocean navigation." "Says who?" Pearson asked with a smile. "Space has flows and currents just like oceans do. Most species ignore them because their ships are powerful enough to go anywhere, but Brown's cargo ships were slow, so she had to be clever." Sarleth brought up the battle recordings again. Now they could see it. Brown's ships always fought near natural space phenomena. They used solar winds to speed up their attacks, hide in radiation fields that confused enemy sensors, and slip through asteroid fields that bigger warships had to go around. "She turned the entire sector into her weapon," Sarleth said softly, "just like Commander Mitchell with the asteroids and Captain Wright with the atmosphere. Humans don't just fight their enemies. They make space itself fight for them." The ship's communication system chimed. First Speaker Naldax's hologram appeared in the center of the room. "Observer Sarleth, what have you found?" "Patterns, First Speaker, but not the kind we expected." Sarleth shared their new map. Human commanders don't just adapt to space. They study it, learn its movements, and use them like tools. They treat space like another ocean to sail. Pearson nodded. "It's basic human nature. We've always had to understand our environment to survive. Space is just a new environment to learn. Naldax's hologram studied the map carefully. Show me more examples. They spent the next hour showing her battle after battle. Commander Lisa Mitchell using asteroid fields to set ambushes. Captain Wright creating artificial weather in space. And now Lieutenant Brown, turning an entire sector into a naval battleground. In every case, Tarleth explained, they're using natural space phenomena as force multipliers. They don't try to overpower their enemies. They use the environment to even the odds. Quarks had been running calculations as they talked. His crystal body glowed brighter. First speaker, I've analyzed 50 major human victories. In 82% of them, they used some form of natural space phenomenon to their advantage. The other 18% involved repurposed civilian technology. And the patterns go deeper, Pearson added. Human commanders share these techniques. After Brown's success, other fleet captains started studying solar winds and gravity fields. They're learning from each other, adapting successful tactics into new forms. Naldax's hologram paced the room. You're saying they're getting better at this? Yes, Sarleth said. Each victory teaches them new ways to use space itself as a weapon. And they're teaching these techniques to their younger officers. He brought up a training simulation from a human military academy. Young officers were learning to navigate solar winds, use gravity wells for speed, and turn asteroid fields into defensive positions. They're systematizing chaos, Quarks realized, his crystal form pulsing with excitement, taking random natural phenomena and turning them into tactical advantages. It's beautiful in a frightening way. Pearson laughed. That's humanity for you. We see patterns everywhere, even in chaos. Maybe especially in chaos. Naldax's hologram watched the training simulation with concern. Can these techniques be countered? That's the clever part, Sarleth said. How do you counter an enemy who uses the very fabric of space as their weapon? You can't turn off solar wind or eliminate gravity wells. The only defense would be to learn their techniques. Which is exactly what they want, Pearson added. The more other species learn to fight like humans, the more we all start thinking like humans. And that's a game humans have been playing their whole lives. The first speaker was quiet for a long moment. Continue your research. I want to know everything about how they teach these techniques. And she hesitated. Perhaps we should consider adding some of these lessons to our own training programs. After her hologram disappeared, the research team went back to work. They had found patterns in human chaos, but those patterns only raised more questions. How many other natural phenomena could be turned into tactical advantages? How many other human commanders were out there, discovering new ways to use space itself as a weapon? You know what's really interesting? Pearson said as they worked. Back on Earth, we have a saying. The more things change, the more they stay the same. We're fighting space battles with techniques learned from ocean currents and weather patterns. We're still sailors and warriors. We just have a bigger ocean now. Sarleth looked out the ship's window at the vast expanse of space. Somewhere out there, human commanders were probably finding new ways to use this endless ocean, new patterns in the chaos, new ways to survive and win. And for the first time, he wondered if maybe they had the right idea all along. Maybe space wasn't meant to be conquered. Maybe it was meant to be sailed, like an endless sea of possibilities, where the clever and adaptable would always find a way to survive. Matthew Pearson stood before the Council of Star Systems, feeling small in the vast crystal chamber. Behind him, a hologram showed Earth's most famous battles throughout history. As the only human consultant on the research team, he had been asked to explain how Earth's military history shaped human space warfare. Let me tell you about a battle that happened over 2,000 years ago, Pearson began. 300 Spartans fought against thousands of Persian soldiers at Thermopylae. The Spartans used the narrow pass to eliminate the Persian army's number advantage. Now, watch this. He switched the hologram to show Admiral Susan Carter's fleet at the Battle of Titan's Ring. Her ships formed a tight line between two asteroid fields, forcing the enemy to approach through a narrow channel. Same strategy, different battlefield, Pearson explained. Admiral Carter turned space into her own Thermopylae. The asteroid fields were her mountain passes. First speaker Naldax leaned forward. You're saying humans just copy old battles? Not copy. Adapt, Pearson corrected. We take lessons from our past and apply them to new situations. Every human commander studies these ancient battles. They're part of our military DNA. Exarleth, standing nearby with his datapad, spoke up. Show them the naval comparison. Pearson nodded and changed the hologram again. Now it showed ancient wooden ships fighting on Earth's oceans. For thousands of years, humans fought on water. We learned about wind patterns, currents, and how to use islands for cover. When we reached space, we already knew how to think in 3 dimensions, how to use natural flows to our advantage. The council members watched as he showed them battle after battle. Ancient navies using islands to ambush enemies, just like Commander Mitchell used asteroids. Old sailing ships using trade winds to gain speed, like Lieutenant Brown with solar winds. Weather patterns affecting sea battles, similar to Captain Wright's artificial space storms. But the real key, Pearson continued, is how we think about war itself. Humans never had biological weapons like drachnid poison stingers or Quark's crystal arrays. We had to make tools, had to learn to turn anything into a weapon. He brought up images of human history, spears made from wooden sticks, stones shaped into arrows, farming tools turned into weapons. This is why we use mining equipment and cargo ships in battle. To us, everything is a potential weapon. It's how we survived on Earth. A council member from a highly advanced species spoke up. But space warfare has rules, protocols. You can't just turn civilian equipment into weapons. Why not? Pearson asked simply. Rules of war are made by the winners. When you're fighting to survive, you use whatever works. That's how humanity survived on Earth, and that's how we survive in space. The chamber erupted in worried whispers. Sarleth stepped forward to show his own research. Look at what happened when the hegemony attacked Earth colonies last year. Humans didn't just fight with warships. Mining outposts turned their equipment into weapons. Cargo ships became troop carriers. Even weather monitoring stations were used to track enemy movements. The whole colony became a weapon, Pearson added, just like ancient human cities under siege. Everything and everyone works together to survive. He showed them more examples. Farming colonists using their equipment to set traps, scientists turning research stations into command centers, civilian ships running blockades like smugglers from Earth's past. This is what you need to understand about humans, Pearson explained. We don't see a difference between military and civilian resources. We don't separate space tactics from planetary warfare. It's all the same to us, finding ways to survive and win. First speaker Naldax raised her hand for quiet. But surely your commanders must follow some kind of standard doctrine. Pearson smiled. Our doctrine is simple. Adapt or die. Every human commander knows the old battles, the old strategies, but they're not rules to follow. They're lessons to learn from. Each commander adds their own ideas, creates new combinations. He showed them Admiral Carter's recent battles. She mixed ancient naval tactics with modern space technology, creating hybrid strategies no one had seen before. Her ships moved like old sailing vessels, but fought with energy weapons and gravity drives. Look at how she positions her fleet, Pearson pointed out. That's an ancient naval formation called crossing the T, but she's using it in 3 dimensions, adding vertical movements that would be impossible on water. She's taking an old idea and making it new. Zarleth's data analysis appeared next to the battle footage. Admiral Carter's success rate increased by 47% after she started combining these old and new tactics. Other human commanders are copying her methods now, adding their own variations. That's the real strength of human military thinking, Pearson said. We learn from everyone and everything. Ancient battles, nature, civilian technology. other species tactics. It's all useful information. We take it all in, mix it up, and create new ways to fight. The council chamber was quiet now, every member lost in thought. They had expected to study human military doctrine, and instead found something much more complex, a whole species that turned survival itself into an art form. One last thing, Pearson added. Everything I've shown you. These are just the tactics we've used so far. Every battle teaches us something new. Every commander adds to our knowledge. We're still learning, still adapting. First speaker Naldak stood slowly. And what happens when you run out of old battles to learn from? Pearson's smile faded slightly. That's just it. We never will. As long as we're fighting, we're creating new lessons for future commanders. Every battle in space becomes part of our military history, teaching the next generation of commanders new ways to survive. After the presentation, Sarleth found Pearson staring out the tower's window at the stars. You worried them, the alien observer said. Good, Pearson replied. They needed to understand. Humans aren't just another spacefaring species learning to fight in space. We're bringing everything we are, everything we've learned, into space with us. All our history, all our survival instincts, all our ability to adapt. He turned to face Karleth. The galaxy thinks space combat needs special rules and protocols. But to us, it's just another battlefield, just another challenge to overcome. And overcoming challenges is what humans do best. Xarleth looked at his data pad, full of battle analyses and historical comparisons. You're creating something new out there, aren't you? A whole new way of fighting in space. No, Pearson said, looking back at the stars. We're creating a whole new way of surviving in space. The fighting is just part of it. Always has been, always will be. The stars twinkled silently, holding countless battlefields where human commanders were even now creating new chapters in their species' long history of survival against the odds. The grand meeting hall of the Council of Star Systems was packed. Representatives from every major spacefaring race had come to hear the final report on human warfare tactics. The chamber hummed with nervous energy as Tarleth prepared his presentation. First speaker Naldax called the meeting to order. Observer Xarleth, after 6 months of study, what have you learned about human combat methods? Xarleth stepped to the center of the room. Behind him, Quarks managed the holographic displays while Matthew Pearson watched from a corner, the only human in the chamber. Honored Council, Xarleth began, we started this study thinking we would find a standard human military doctrine. Instead, we found something far more interesting and far more concerning. The first hologram showed Commander Alan Peterson's recent victory at the Antares Crossroads. His ships had used solar winds and gravity wells in ways that defied traditional space combat logic, turning natural phenomena into weapons and shields. Commander Peterson didn't just win this battle, Sarleth explained. He changed how we think about space warfare. He proved that natural space phenomena aren't obstacles to avoid. They're tools to use. Quarks's crystalline form pulsed as he added data to the display. Peterson's techniques have already been adopted by 12 other human commanders. Each one adds their own variations, creating new tactics we've never seen before. A Drachnid representative stood up. This is the problem. Humans keep changing how they fight. How can we predict their actions if they don't follow standard combat protocols? That's exactly the point, Kaharleth said. Humans don't want to be predictable. They see predictability as a weakness. Every time we think we understand their tactics, they create new ones. He showed them more battles. Colonies turning mining equipment into weapons, cargo ships becoming warships, civilian technology adapted for combat. Each example showed humans finding new ways to fight, new tools to use, new tactics to surprise their enemies. But the most important thing we learned, Sarleth continued, is that humans don't see space as we do. To them, space isn't empty. It's full of resources to use, solar winds, gravity fields, radiation belts, Asteroid fields. They treat space like their ancestors treated Earth's oceans and forests. Matthew Pearson stepped forward when Sarleth gestured to him. Think about Earth's oceans, the human consultant said. They're vast, dangerous, and full of forces you can't control. But our ancestors learned to use those forces, winds, currents, weather patterns. We're doing the same thing in space. The hologram showed Captain Wright's battle tactics, using artificial storms for cover. Lieutenant Brown's fleet riding solar winds like ancient sailing ships. Commander Mitchell turning asteroid fields into weapon systems. In every case, Sarleth explained, humans are applying lessons from their planetary experience to space combat. They're not trying to master space. They're adapting to it, working with it, using its natural forces to their advantage. First speaker Naldax leaned forward. And what are your conclusions about facing humans in combat? Sarleth took a deep breath. Based on our research, we have three main conclusions. First, never assume you know what humans will do. They value unpredictability and will always look for new ways to fight. The hologram showed battle after battle where humans used unexpected tactics to defeat stronger enemies. Second, he continued, don't underestimate human resourcefulness. They can turn anything into a weapon. Civilian equipment, natural phenomena, even their own weaknesses. Humans will use whatever tools they have available. Now the display showed colonies defending themselves with mining equipment, research stations becoming fortresses, cargo ships transformed into warships. And third, most importantly, Sarleth said, his voice growing serious, we must understand that humans are still evolving their combat methods. Every battle teaches them something new. Every victory gives them new ideas to build on. They're not just fighting. They're learning, adapting, creating new ways to survive in space. The chamber was silent as the council members absorbed these conclusions. Then a young Quarks representative spoke up. Should we be worried? Matthew Pearson answered before anyone else could. That depends on whether you're our friend or our enemy. Humans make dangerous enemies but valuable allies. We apply the same creativity and adaptability to protecting our friends as we do to fighting our enemies. Sarleth nodded in agreement. This is perhaps our most important recommendation to the Council. Humanity's approach to warfare makes them unpredictable enemies but powerful allies. They can teach us new ways to use space itself as a tool, new ways to adapt and survive. The hologram showed human ships fighting alongside alien vessels, sharing tactics, combining different species' strengths. The results were impressive. Joint fleets using both traditional military power and human adaptability to achieve victories that neither could have managed alone. Look at what happened when Admiral Carter's fleet joined the Centauri Defense Force. Sarleth pointed out. She taught them to use solar winds for tactical advantage. They taught her to enhance her ship's energy weapons. Together, they created entirely new combat techniques. First speaker Naldax stood slowly. So your final recommendation is cooperation, Sarleth said firmly. Learn from humans. Share knowledge with them. Let them teach us to see space differently, while we teach them to use our advanced technology. Together, we can create better ways to defend our worlds and protect our people. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some members argued for restricting human military activities. Others wanted to start joint training programs immediately. A few suggested creating a special council to study and share combat techniques between species. As the debate continued, Sarleth, Quarks, and Pearson stood together near the chamber's great window, watching the stars. They're afraid, Quarks observed, his crystal form flickering with concern. They should be, Pearson said quietly. Humans are dangerous. We know that better than anyone. But we're also loyal friends and allies. We fight hard, but we fight hardest to protect those we care about. Sarleth looked at his data pad, full of battle records and tactical analyses. The galaxy is changing, he said. The old ways of space combat are evolving. Humans didn't start this change. but they're leading it, teaching us all to see space differently. That's what humans do, Pearson smiled. We explore, we adapt, we survive, and we help others do the same. It's who we are. The three of them watched as the council continued their heated debate. But Sarleth knew the decision was already made. The galaxy would never be the same now that humans had joined the spacefaring races. They had brought with them new ways of thinking, new ways of fighting, new ways of surviving. And perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed. A species that could teach them all to adapt, to change, to see the endless possibilities in the vast ocean of stars. A species that turned survival itself into an art form and warfare into a dance with the very forces of space. The future would be interesting indeed.